Hey everyone! Thanks for listening to Just Start Talking with Stephanie and Melissa. We really hope you enjoy today's show. And if you like what you hear, please find us on Facebook at Just Start Talking and on Instagram at just_start talking. Now, on to the show. Hello everyone, welcome to the show. We have a special guest today. Her name is Dominique, and she is the owner of Paper Doll Vintage Boutique. And we are incredibly honored to have her on today. Welcome, Dominique. How are you?
I'm all right. Thank you for having me on today.
Thank you for coming on. So let's get right into it. Tell us what Paper Doll Vintage Boutique is.
Paper Doll Vintage Boutique is a vintage clothing and accessory shop. We've been open for going on 9 years now, and it's located in the heart of Sayville on Main Street. We carry true vintage clothing from the 1920s through the 1990s, even some Y2K sprinkled in there, because now people think that's vintage as well, which it technically is, despite us not wanting to believe that. But yeah, and then we carry some like shoes and handbags and jewelry and accessories as well.
Wonderful. And you also own a sister store called Paper Doll Curiosity Shop. So what does that have in it? What's different? What makes that different from the boutique?
Paper Doll Curiosity Shop is located in Patchogue, a neighboring town about 10-15 minutes away from Sayville. And it is more of a retail kind of novelty shop. So the things in there are vintage inspired, but they're not true vintage. And it's a little more gift shoppy. It's like if our sister store Paper Doll Vintage had like a love child with Spencer's Gifts and, Paper Doll Curiosity Shop came out. It's kind of got like funky, weird toys that are retro inspired, that during the daytime, there's a lot of young families that live in Patchogue. So the kids love it. It's nostalgic for the parents. It's nostalgic for a lot of people. And then at nighttime, it's a big bar and restaurant town. And after a couple of drinks, the same things that kids love are hilarious to people who have had a couple of drinks. So, it's we try to stay open pretty much all day into the evenings, especially when COVID wasn't happening. We stayed up until midnight on many days because the bar crowd loves like little novelty toys. And then we have some clothes in there as well, but they're a little bit more like trendy, gothy, punky, bohemian kind of clothes, as opposed to like the true vintage stuff that tends to be really delicate.
Very cool.
Can I just add something? That the two towns that we are talking about are located on Long Island in New York, for those listeners that are not local to the area. And then also I have another question. What defines vintage? Because you said some stuff from like Y2K. So what's the definition of vintage? What would define it?
So vintage is something that is a generation old, they'll say.
Okay.
So technically Y2K at this point is 21 years old. So
yes,
that's a generation. Yeah.
Okay. Wow, that's neat. I never thought about that. So cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
It kind of makes me feel old, I got to tell you, knowing that the stuff I grew up with is now considered vintage. But
I don't know if you've seen, there's been a lot of memes going around by Gen Zers about side parted hair and skinny jeans, because now all the youngins these days are center parting their hair and wearing the same jeans we wore back in like middle school, like the pipe leg baggy,
Yep.
baggy
I
jeans.
have been.
So,
yes, I've seen that.
90s Y2K is back.
Yes.
I remember those looks, the styles that we all went to school with.
They're coming right back. Yeah. Everything comes back. I remember being in middle school and I feel like I'm going to date myself, but all of a sudden all these like 70s retro styles came back, and I remember my mom and grandma saying, I wish I saved your clothes. Like now we're just buying clothes that were in style 30 years ago. And I was like, and now here we are 20 years later, and I'm like, oh, that was popular when I was younger. Funny. All right. So what was it like to start your small business back in 2013? Or
Well, prior to that, I was working as a designer at a craft kit manufacturer, and
uh
I thought that's what I would like to do, but I didn't like doing it after a couple of months. It was in an office, and I'm a very people-y person and a very social, and being stifled in this office with like one window drawing puppy dogs and unicorns all day, which sounded really exciting in the beginning. After 3 months of like puppy dogs and unicorns, it's just like, oh, how could like how many more unicorns can I reinvent? So uh, and then selling vintage was something I did on the side since probably like middle school, high school. Middle school, I started selling things on eBay, and then when I went to college in Chicago, I started consigning things to consignment shops. And then I kept collecting the stuff. And even after moving back to New York, I started sending them packages and they sent me checks. And one day they closed and I had all this like inventory accumulated. And so I started looking into both getting a degree in like art education and into opening my own business. And at the time, I was living with my boyfriend. We were accumulating different fixtures as stores were closing, or I was accumulating, and he was getting very tired of me accumulating a lot of these things. And he saw my eBay business grow and had a lot of like faith in what I was doing and my work ethic. So, we went in together and he invested into helping me open up in a location once, I had all this inventory and I had invested into all these fixtures and everything. And all we really needed was a storefront, which was in and of itself something that was very difficult to find because at the time we were 28 years old and first time business owners, and it's very hard for people to want to trust somebody that age without business experience to rent a location to them. And I also did a lot of research. I took a class at the library on how to start your own business, actually. And it was an amazing course because I went to school for art. So I knew nothing about what it's like to start a business. So I took a class at the library and they told you everything from like how to write a business plan. And they gave you this like workbook, or they sold you this workbook that was very inexpensive. And it was amazing and very eye-opening because once I wrote the business plan or started doing like a lot of the numbers, my original idea was to open on like the Lower East Side of the village, or like kind of around Chinatown or somewhere around there. And once I really started doing the research and following the steps that were like literally in this workbook, my idea didn't seem to add up. And the numbers of like how much it would cost, how long I would have to commute, how much I would have to sell every day in order to break even was so expensive and so much money. And I was like, I don't feel safe like doing this. So I started looking in the city, but then after I reevaluated everything based on that class I took at the library, I started looking on Long Island and I started spending days in every town on Long Island and researching everything from malls to strip malls to like little villages around Long Island. And I really narrowed it down to just like a couple of villages that I thought this type of business could sustain itself. I would even go into stores. I would ask store owners, if how business was going. I would see what stores were around for many years versus what stores were closing and what people were looking for in each area. So that really narrowed it down to just like a few towns on Long Island that seemed doable. And it was probably about 5-6 years between like not 5-6 years, about 4 or 5 years. I was at the design company for about 3 years, and then I was bartending for about 3 years. Yeah, so it was about 6 years of like research and figuring it out and trying and things falling through and failing before I even like was able to find a location that would entertain renting to, these two young whippersnappers eager to open a business with no experience. So it was a journey to try to like find something and be taken seriously enough. And, that the class at the library was very eye-opening as well. So I would say, definitely putting together a business plan and things not being exactly what your vision or your dream originally is, and then kind of modifying that was a big thing. And then so many things fell through, like locations that were pulled out from under my feet, but in the end the Sayville location came through, and I was happy that the other ones didn't, because it was bigger and better, and it needed more work, but it allowed it to be more customized and personal to what we thought would actually work for us. And Sayville has been a wonderful town for retail, all in the end.
Wow. So failing forward and not giving up. That's what I hear. You kept at it, and you went and educated yourself. You said, I need to figure out how to do this, and you found resources, and you were patient with the process. Well, maybe not all the time, but
not all the time. There was a lot of crying. There was a lot of crying. There was like frustration, a lot of defeat, and there were waves and whatever. But and at the same time, I was simultaneously kind of like looking at getting a master's degree and just going into art education. But at the same time, art education is a very risky degree at this point in time too, because there's a lot of cutbacks in fields like that. So I was like, what am I gonna do next? So
yeah, it is a risky field to go into, and you are still using your love of art. It's your passion, and now it's your livelihood. So way to go for keeping at it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. Steph?
Absolutely. So once you got everything set up and open, what struggles did you have once you opened as a small business owner? Like what did you have to deal with?
Oh gosh, so much. So like the first 3 years, it was just like day to day, just trying to get like recognized, trying to get the word out there that we even existed. People, there was foot traffic, but the vintage boutique came first, and it's not a popular thing on Long Island. So people would walk around and they'd look at the store and they'd be like, vintage boutique. And they'd come in, and the first thing they'd be like is, what's vintage? And I would be like, oh, it's something that's a generation old. And then they'd be like, why would I pay $65 for a used dress when I could go to Marshall's and get a new dress for $25? And then I had to explain to each, Karen and Dawn off the street that, these things are over 100 years old, or 70 years old, or whatever, however old they were. They're one of a kind. They don't make things like they used to. You go to a wedding in this dress and nobody's going to have the same dress. Things used to be made to last, and you would get them altered as opposed to like disposable fashion, this designer and this material and everything. And so we actually had to convert people into believing that, or recognizing that vintage has a value because of its uniqueness and the way things are made. So there was that, and then just getting the word out there. There was so much we did on social media to try to get things out on Facebook and on Instagram. I was using a flip phone when I first started the business because I was very reluctant to get a smartphone. I'm a little bit of a technophobe. And, I went to this Chamber of Commerce meeting where they told us the importance of social media to really utilize it for your business. And after that meeting, first thing I did was I went out and I got myself a smartphone, and I started using Facebook and Instagram more for business. And that really is what got the word out there about the stores. So, because otherwise, if you're just counting on people within the town that you open up your business in and foot traffic, that is not enough on Long Island. And Long Island is also it's an interesting place. I feel a lot of trends can kind of come here a little bit slower, even though it's right by the city. I don't understand why. And I don't understand why people don't get things here as fast. Because even if you go to Hudson Valley, New York, upstate, any other state I've ever traveled to, there's vintage stores, and I feel they do not have to convert or translate everything like they have on Long Island. And there have been other vintage stores on Long Island where I've spoken to the owners, and they're like, yeah, man, people just don't get And so it's a very niche thing. And at least for me, it was a struggle to get the word out there and to get people to understand exactly what it was for quite a while. But then since we were one of the very few or only vintage stores on Long Island, we became a destination location. So people would come out from out east, and people would come out from the city and from Nassau, and everybody who was into it would come to the shop. And luckily Sayville has great parking and everything, so it wasn't that difficult to park in town and make it a destination. So that was like the first 3 years struggle, was just like getting the word out there and building a loyal customer base.
And now you actually opened up a couple of locations, right?
Oh yeah, there's lots of failing and trying. So after Sayville opened, 3 years after that, things finally started to kind of work. And so then I got a little too ballsy, and I think pulled the trigger too soon on opening a second location in Huntington. And then the second location was the Vintage Boutique, and we did have a lot of like vintage reproductions as well at that time. They were selling well, and we opened that shop. I again went in with my business partner, and he thought that it was a good time for, or he agreed, had faith that I can kind of do this. So we went in and we got the second location in Huntington, and it started off with a bang. And then it just like, it fizzled. It was a hard winter, and it seemed like people like were really into it when they first opened, but then the parking situation in that town was really crummy. And then the weather would always affect what business was like. And then we had to take down our sign because we had these neighbors that they were renting the upstairs, and originally they said we could use the whole sign space, and then we had to take down the sign because they changed their mind, and there was all this sign drama with the neighbors and the landlord. So, and then another location across the street opened up for the same price that was closer to like a music venue. So my partner and I kind of talked about it. We were like, should we continue here? Should we close, or should we move? And, you know, this is another thing where, again, like, I feel like I got too over eager, overexcited, over whatever, but I was just like, I think it wasn't a bad location. It wasn't a bad decision, I guess, but between time and budgeting and everything, we moved over there, and we were only able to sustain being open 6 months because at the time, like, the winter was harsher, the renovations took longer than expected, and like financially, like, it started becoming a struggle. Somewhere in the meantime, between moving those 2 stores, or maybe it was even after opening the second store, at this point, like, I'm like starting to lose track. I think it was 6 months after I opened the first Huntington location. I think that's what it was. We found this amazing location in Patchogue, and it was such a good deal. And it was the original town that I actually wanted to open a business in, that we ended up like pulling the trigger on renting yet another store in Patchogue. So here we are with 3 stores. And actually, during the time, now it's starting to come back to me, during the time when we were moving, there was actually a time where we technically had 4 store locations going. One of them was closed, and then we closed one and opened the other, but like we had our hands in 4 different locations. And then the Patchogue store, we did all these really cool renovations. We made it from an office space into this like Coney Island inspired looking funky gift shop. And then we opened the other one, which in Huntington, after moving it across the street, and we kind of rebranded it as that store, that type of store as well. And at the time, I made a big mistake. I got involved in a loan situation that I shouldn't have taken, and I signed like a document that essentially put all my businesses at risk, and everything that I owned at risk. My business partner helped me kind of get out of that, or at least it was a lot of drama. It's still like, I'm still paying lawyer for what it went through, but it could have shut down all of the businesses, but we had to close at least one. I did not have enough capital, enough inventory, enough time. Everything started slipping away, and it was like when we had to kill one, out of the three, even though the new Huntington location was doing far better than the first Huntington location, that store was 40 minutes, 45 minutes away from the other two stores, and that one had to go. Plus, the store in Sayville and the store in Patchogue were more consistent with sales, whereas I said in the beginning, if it rained and the parking and everything in Huntington, it affected the sales. So when one had to go, that was the one that had to go. Plus, even making those poor decisions, gave some like resentment towards that location as well, and all like the drama that happened with like the neighbors and the landlord. It was like, let's just get away from this. So that was four locations at once technically. And then we have a friend in Huntington who has a store that's like an antique multi-vendor antique store called Rosie's Vintage. And Thea, the owner there, it's a beautiful store. It has all different things with an emphasis on like mid-century stuff, but she invited me to be the clothing vendor there. So I could still keep a footprint in Huntington and still have some business there and keep some customers there without, having to have the responsibility of owning a store there and dealing with employees and all the drama and everything that came along with that. So now I am down to 2 stores and then a little satellite closet over at Rosie's Vintage in Huntington after all that happened with all that financial and legal drama with the stores there. So don't bite off more than you can chew is certainly the lightest way I could put that lesson. And read all documents thoroughly, because there were like legal loopholes in the drama that I went through, that because I failed to read things thoroughly and was under duress and stress to try to move things forward and save the situation, that I made a hasty decision to take this predatory loan essentially that could have cost everything and beyond. And my partner Joe was very helpful and diligent about seeking the help so we could at least maintain some of the businesses and walk away from this in a way as best as we could. We still don't see eye to eye on how it could have been resolved. He wanted to pursue more legal action, and I just wanted to walk away from the whole situation. So I took a really crappy settlement because it was in my name, whereas he thinks that if we pursued further legal action, we could have actually kind of come out on top in some ways. So this is unknown because obviously we chose one path, or I chose one path.
Right.
But yeah, wow. Heavy drama. Yes.
That's a lot.
Yeah. I mean, opening a small business is a risk, and you have to have a strong character to persevere through the challenges, because that's heavy. That must have been scary.
It was like, totally scary. I thought like
what?
the mob might have been after me. I didn't know if like the mafia was involved. I didn't know like what was going on, because like they started, the business was so shady that that did this to us, that they were like putting on fake voices and hanging up on me and dodging me. And it was like, how is this possibly like legal or possible that this is happening? But it did. And, this is a company that technically actually has like a reputation in the industry of, the way they, in their industry of lenders, and their reputation is actually not even that bad. I mean, they have bad Yelp reviews and customer reviews, but there's corruption like within the way things work that allow them to still even essentially advertise themselves as non-predatory, and they still exist and they still do this to people through some, laws were changed during this time that allow less legal shenanigans to happen, but shenanigans still happen. And, even if you their Better Business Bureau page is actually like still clean, despite the fact that they do this. So you can't even trust like the Better Business Bureau pages when researching a lot of these businesses. You have to like really look for like some reviews and stuff, but like just don't borrow money from somebody who's not a bank. Like, don't do it. There's a lot of predatory scams out there. And, I learned the hard way.
But you can't, but you're still, your business is still here, and that's the important thing. Wow.
2 out of 3 ain't bad, I guess. But the repercussions are like years to come even still. So it's crazy.
So lesson learned the hard way. Anyone out there looking to start a business or get a loan, do it through a bank.
Don't take a merchant cash advance unless it's through, sometimes the ones that are through Square offers this through Apple. Those are okay. I mean, the percentage that they charge you is kind of expensive to borrow money, but yeah, a lot of merchant cash advances, a lot of the companies that provide them, it's sketchy. I mean, there is a time and place that, I know that they have helped people, and not all of them are predatory, but some of them are, and sometimes it's hard to tell.
It's scary.
Yeah, like I feel bad that you even had to go through that, and that they even do this to people.
Yeah, people lose their homes because of this. Like, they could put a lien on everything you own, and you could be like homeless. There was another company that did this to another business owner, and his wife had cancer, and they like sent her flowers and were still shaking him down for like the money. And it's like,
wow,
just like crazy stuff. There's a series of Bloomberg articles called Bloomberg News, Sign Here, Lose Everything. And it's a series of like 4 articles written exactly about this during the time that, I was going through it, and I was asked to be a part of those articles. I kind of missed the deadline on the cusp a little bit of reporting it through that. There is an article that was written about my company and everything that we went through. But there's a lot of, there's no lines sometimes when it comes to money for some people in some companies, and a lot of corruption that goes on that allows this to happen, and a lot of ethical lines that are crossed for sure.
Wow. Well, I'm glad you were able to keep the stores that you still have.
Thank you.
I think you came out on top with that you were able to get out of it. Like that's it's a positive.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So how have things changed for you now during the time of COVID, so to speak?
So, just as I started to see the light at the end of the tunnel from getting through that cash advance drama and everything, and just as I started to pull through financially and be like, okay, I'm catching my breath. We're out, and I'm finally starting to feel caught up. COVID hits. And COVID hits, we have to close the stores. Even before we have to close the stores, people are starting to get scared of this like unknown virus that's running rampant. They're not coming shopping. Everybody's like walking around with gloves and like painter suits. Like, nobody wants to try anything on because everybody's terrified, not knowing how contagious anything is or isn't. And then we have to close, and everybody's closed, and the world practically shuts down. It was like mad, like it's like a sci-fi movie thinking about what was going on a year ago right now.
Right.
Yeah.
And we closed, and as soon as we closed, I called my dad at the time, and I was just like, what the hell am I supposed to do? And he's just like, well, you have the internet, and you have like a fully captive audience right now. Like, use this to your advantage. Like, you're creative, you could figure it out. I don't know your business like you know your business, but like, you have a captive audience sitting at home on Facebook, bored. Like, do something with that. And I was like, you're right. So I never stopped going to work or going in or anything. I was just like, I just have to like work harder now. So I went into the shop the first day after lockdown, and I set up a ring light and a backdrop, and I just started talking to people. I'm like, hey, everybody, on Facebook Live. Here at the shop, we're totally closed, but that doesn't mean I can't be here. I have a store full of amazing stuff. Like, let me show you some things. And I started like holding some stuff up, talking about each item, talking about why each thing was special. People were bored, so they were watching, and they would buy stuff. It was great. They started buying things, and then I went back and forth between the two stores, and I started like walking around the store, essentially doing a tour, and people on Facebook Live would be like, oh, what's that? What's that? And then one of my friends from, I went to this camp called Camp John Waters. And so I have friends all over the country that are, that went to this camp, and we have this camp family that stayed in touch through Facebook. And they, a lot of them were like, oh, can you just like make me a box of stuff that's cat themed for $50? And I was like, I can do that. Cool. And then that started becoming like a popular thing where people were like, surprise me, they're sitting at home, they're not able to go to stores, and they're bored. So they like a surprise box became something that was like an exciting thing to get in the mail. So I started going to the vintage store too and being like, okay, send me your measurements, your favorite aesthetic, your favorite like colors, and your favorite decade, and let me and how much money you want to give me. And like, I'll put together a box for that. Let's make this happen. So that became a thing. I had a light box and a backdrop. I have an amazing manager, Amanda Riley, who's also an artist, and she knows like graphic design. So I had her working from home pretty much the whole time. And I would take pictures of things, and I would take measurements and whatever. And I would take all the content that I shot and all the concepts, send it to her. She would edit all the pictures, upload it onto the website, and we kept things kind of going like that. So she was able to work remotely pretty much all throughout the pandemic. The first holiday that started coming around was Easter. So in April, people weren't going out. So I started making custom Easter baskets, and I sold about 150 custom Easter baskets because people didn't want to go out, and I put on the gloves and I put on the masks, and I was like, all right, unicorns for 25, and space themed for like 75, and then depending on what you wanted to spend, the basket would be smaller or bigger. I killed myself doing this because I pulled all-nighters to put together 150 custom baskets and get all the supplies and get everything. But like, it really connected us with our customers too, to do all this personalization and everything. I was able to recruit some of my employees that were also staying at home and have them do deliveries. So I would make the baskets, and depending on everyone's comfort level, I never wanted to push anybody to feel like they were at risk of getting COVID. But at the same time, if they were comfortable coming in and working with me on assembling something, then I, had the two of us or the three of us putting things together. So I recruited back some of my employees to do deliveries. So I would give them baskets, and I'd be like, all right, here's a list of addresses, and here's a list of, everybody who needs this delivered today. And all 150 baskets went out, and, there was some errors here and there, but in general, it was like amazing how many people like were so happy with their baskets. Like there was maybe like 3 or 4 different like baskets that we messed up. Like the address was delivered to the wrong house, or it was the wrong, that like somebody wasn't happy. But really, out of like 150 baskets, I was so happy that everyone was happy. And then on the last day, I actually dressed up as Frank from Donnie Darko, which is this like scary, creepy rabbit. And people have requested that Frank do deliveries on Easter morning with the baskets. And so I went around to, I think it was like 15 or 20 different houses, started at like 7 or 8 in the morning, dressed as Frank the rabbit, because we always photo shoots. Photo shoots are big at our like curiosity shop, and so we always offered photo shoots with Frank the rabbit. And since there was a pandemic going on, we couldn't do the photo shoots because of like contact and proximity and everything. So I just offered to do deliveries, and people like loved the hell out of that. The last delivery was like to my dad's and then to my sister's, so then I could spend the rest of Easter with my family, and that was that. But that was like the first custom gift baskets we started doing, which snowballed into an idea that we're still working with right now. Now we're doing gift baskets really for every holiday. So we just had Valentine's Day. Prior to that, we had Christmas and the holidays. Now we do everything like a little bit weird and alternative because that's our thing. So for Christmas, holiday season, Yule, we did Krampus baskets. So instead of Santa and Christmas, Krampus is the Germanic folklore character that punishes the bad kids. So we had Krampus baskets, and we always do photos with Krampus too. So we had photos with Krampus, and we took our Krampus thing and brought it to the next level. And now for Valentine's Day, we did like a Queen themed basket. Amanda Riley, that amazing manager that I told you about, who's an artist, she designed some custom products for these things. So that way you can't get them off of Amazon, and it supports local art and artists and offers something really unique from the shop. And then during the pandemic, going back to pandemic times, there was also Mother's Day. So I did Mother's Day baskets and then Father's Day. But as time progressed, you know, it got looser and looser with like COVID restrictions. And I started getting more and more tired of doing these custom baskets that were keeping me up all night because I didn't have much help, because not that many people were comfortable with working and I couldn't even afford much help. So, you know, but out of that, the idea of the gift baskets were born, and it's something that I plan on continuing to do and still figuring out how to make things kind of customized, because we walked away a little bit from the customized baskets and I want to get back into a little more customization, but not killing myself with working like overnighters and, you know, pushing myself that level. Over the last year, my dad also passed away, and that put a lot of stress on the business as well, because I just couldn't fully be present there, both physically and emotionally. And so I knew that these baskets were very popular and well liked, but at the same time, to do 150 custom things, I just didn't have the energy and strength to do that at the time. So that's why I kind of simplified it into these, you know, 100 of the same thing or whatever. But now Easter is going to be coming around, and I want to start getting a little more personal with it again. So that's kind of like the pandemic time. And the vintage mystery boxes are something that are still popular. People will still, on our website, if you go to shoppaperdoll.com, you could choose a value if you want clothing, accessories, or clothing and accessories. And we still sell those now year round. That's going to be something that we offer forever, essentially. So, you know, despite all the hardships and downturns and everything of COVID, like, some new ideas were born that are going to be carried through the business now moving forward.
That is brilliant. Former technophobe took complete control with technology and kept your business alive and thriving.
I'm still a technophobe though.
But what?
Amanda does all the photo editing. She lists everything on the website. Like, I can go on the app and find like the address of where I'm supposed to mail things to, but I'm still doing a lot of the like hands-on physical stuff. And when it comes to like the online stuff, she is like God sent with, you know, being able to help me and work with me on that. She is so good at like all the graphics and like understanding, you know, everything from the website. You know, she went to school for graphic design, and she has a good concept. I mean, right now I don't even own a computer of my own. I don't own a television. My phone is an iPhone 7 Plus, like, you know. So I'm still like sitting back, and I am very like Facebook active, especially for my business. But you know, other than that, I'm still, I would go under the technophobe category.
But it's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah,
I want a mystery box. Sorry. Go on, Steph.
I was actually going to say, you know, if you take orders early enough and have like a cutoff date for the custom baskets, I would absolutely put in.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm probably going to get up within the next 2 weeks is my projected timeline to start figuring out what to do for the Easter baskets and everything. So, and that'll be up on our website as well. And all of that, like the deliveries we did at the time, but we're not limited to deliveries. I've been sending all over the country because the website has been more popular, and I do have friends from camp and from college and from everywhere that are all over the country. So, I had to make my business, I was forced to make my business more accessible via mail because of COVID. Because before, like, our website was really didn't have, it had like a very small percentage of the vintage items only available for sale, and COVID did force us to put more of the retail items on there and come up with these like gift baskets, mystery boxes, and all that keep our website far more active now, and something that's going to be continuously also growing into the future.
That's amazing. So COVID could have potentially been awful, but something beautiful was born from it. That's amazing. I love
it. It was off. Sales went down.
Oh yeah, I know.
The government assistance, we got the PPP and the EIDL, and that helped. But eventually the EIDL I'm going to have to pay back. I think the PPP is forgivable. They did what they were actually designed to do. I used them exactly what they were designed for, and it is helping us take the next steps. I know a lot of other businesses did not survive the pandemic and are still struggling and closing down because of it. And I do feel lucky that we were able to figure ways that to make business happen, that we're still standing. So
yeah. Wow, I'm so inspired.
It gives you kind of a better sense of being grateful for what you have. It's a different type of, what do I want to say, like perspective than before COVID.
Yeah.
I'm sure like everybody's grateful that they're open and that they have a business, and then all of a sudden this hits and it's just a different, you're grateful for different reasons.
I have another question.
Yeah.
This is kind of going back to the beginning, but you said you get these vintage pieces that are maybe hundreds of years old, or how do you get them? Like, where do you?
Hundreds. Some, I guess, going turn centuries, like some of the oldest I'll have.
But where?
So mostly I'll do like estate clear outs. So not necessarily estate sales, because estate sales, there's a lot of competition of other people trying to go there and dig stuff, and I don't like to like fight with people. I don't like to be up that early. Also, like when I go, I'm spread so thin that like I like to know that when I'm going somewhere, I'm going to get a lot of stuff and it's going to be worth my time.
Right.
So, I used to do more like thrift stores, estate sales, things like that. And it was like finding a needle in a haystack, and that's super fun, but it's not the most productive. So now that people know that I have the store, that I'm established and everything, they call the shop. And then I'm also, in a circuit with a bunch of other antique dealers that know that if there's a lot of clothes that I'm going to be interested. So I get calls from people that are cleaning out grandma's house and she's got closets full of stuff and they don't know what to do with it. And they're happy for all these clothes to get a second life because they have no idea what to do with them, and they want them to get appreciated, and they're willing to sell them at, a good bulk price so that they get something to help grandma move to a retirement home or sell the house or whatever. And I get a good deal where I get a lot of stuff that I can make my markups, figure out like the pricing and everything later, get it all cleaned up, and sell it and make the store work that way. So I'll go to people's houses, which is, I love doing this. I don't do it as that often, really. Maybe like once a month or twice a month, I'll go to somebody's house, go through all the closets, fill up my car, and cut a deal. And then it takes me a long time to process a lot of those clothes too, because if I'm buying carloads of stuff, I separate it into seasons. There's things that need to be hand washed or like washed in the washing machine or dry cleaned, things that need to be fixed. So I'll buy stuff in bulk, usually that way by going into a house that's cleaning out all of its contents. And then a lot of the time, if I see other things, I'm like, oh, they have vintage Halloween decor and Christmas decor. Let me call Thea over at Rosie's because she specializes in that stuff. Or if it's like vintage men's stuff, or sports equipment. I've got a friend, George, who has a vintage store that does, men's and sports kind of stuff. So, there's different dealers that specialize in different things, and having like friends that are in the industry that aren't necessarily viewing you as competition, but more as part of the community is super helpful with getting leads on that as well as just, people knowing of us as, the vintage store that's been around for a while.
That's fabulous. That is so neat.
You also do art viewings at your Sayville store, right?
Yes.
You have independent artists come in.
Yes. So we have monthly art shows. So these are done every month. There's a different theme. So for February, we did Forms of Love. For January, we usually do a free art show. That's all the unclaimed art that has been left behind by artists for the last year or two or three. They get their final chances to pick up their stuff. And if they don't pick up their stuff, free art show. So people place dibs on pieces there. For March, we have an open call right now for, I think the theme is disconnection and connection. I thought that might be a cool theme. Everybody during COVID got very disconnected from their reality. Sometimes they disconnected from their friends. Sometimes a lot of people connected through COVID because they were on the internet a bunch and they started talking more. So I figured maybe, and it doesn't even have to be COVID inspired. I think usually when we do art shows, we try to have something that's vague enough and specific enough where it's open to artist interpretation, but it has a common thread to it. So a lot of the time we'll do something seasonal, like something lovey-dovey or sexy for Valentine's Day month, and we'll do something summery during the summer months, and we do a gift art show of all art under $100 in December for Christmas time, so that way people can buy gifts. So we try to make it like relative to whatever is being whatever is in season that month. And then if we can't think of something special or holiday-ish that's going on that month, then I pull something out of the air that I think is just a vague, cool concept that artists might be able to be inspired to either create work for or already have work that has to do with that.
Yeah, wow. I remember I was part of your Pride Month art show. Yes. I love that one. Mm-hmm. I thought that was great. I loved walking around, seeing everybody's paintings.
Yeah, we had a good turnout. We get anywhere from 10 to 30 artists per art show submitting. That was a pretty big one. I think we had like 20 something artists in that one.
Yeah, there was a lot. When I was walking around, there was a lot of art, and it was all beautiful and good for different things. It was great. Great thing to be a part of. Then also, you have been known and voted as Long Island's best vintage clothing store since 2013. So congratulations and kudos to you.
Thank you.
How does that work? How do they?
Well, it's what is it? Long Island Press and Bethpage Federal Credit Union run this contest every year. It is for the best of Long Island, and they sell ads to both ask for people to vote for you, as well as to thank people for voting for you. And then, I mean, with vintage clothing, there hasn't been too many other vintage clothing stores around. So, we've always been pushing it to, or we've always asked or had a lot of support as one of the few vintage clothing stores. So we've won, I guess, 8 years or 9 years in a row. This year is the first year that we haven't won, but I'm not sure who did win, because I remember the list of different stores that were on there, and I don't remember any stores that are currently open that were listed in the vintage clothing category. So I have yet to find out who won this year. If it could help them in any way, that's cool. I mean, it's cool to have like bragging rights to be like, oh, we're the undefeated champion of the Long Island vintage world. But at this point, like, we've won so many times that it's just like, oh, okay, cool, we have this award. And this year they're not even doing like an awards party or an award ceremony because of COVID.
Right.
So we're not really missing the party or anything either. So if the press can help, if there is some like new store that's out there that was in the running and the press can help them, by them winning, then that's kind of cool. I wonder if it's maybe like I didn't put my effort into also asking my friends and family to vote that much this year. And I feel like a little like, oh, was I too lazy with like asking? Because I was going through so much with like COVID and my dad being sick and passing. And then I traveled out of the country in September for like his arrangements. So I had all this other stuff going on and actually like so busy running the business that I never like really solicited on Facebook or anywhere to like vote. So I don't know. I guess we'll find out with that, but I'm honored that for so many years we have been consistently chosen as the best of Long Island, and it's been first place, and it gets a little write up in Long Island Press or whatever newspaper is running it at the time, and there's always been a really fun little ceremony that's been everywhere from like Ohika Castle to like all these other cool like catering venues that my employees and I and business partner have gone to that have been really fun, because then you're hanging out with all the other best of Long Island. So it's a good networking event as well.
Yeah, but that's an amazing feat coming from where you were struggling in the beginning for the first 3 years, and now you're winning awards and things are just.
I mean, we won even right after we opened. We were nominated like a month or two afterwards, and we won the year we opened. Like since we opened our doors, we were winning this, so that was cool.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
What kind of advice can you give those? I know you gave some before, but for somebody who's looking to open a business, or a small business, I should say, what kind of advice can you give?
It's a lifestyle. Like it's not just like, and it's not easy. If you want to work harder than you've ever worked before for less money than you've ever made, then this is for you. I think it depends on the type of business too. Like retail is really hard. Retail is like a dying industry in many ways because of Amazon and Walmart and those Chinese websites that sell everything for like 50 cents. It's to compete against that, because people are always going to price compare. People like literally look stuff up in front of you at the store and be like, well, I could get this on Amazon for $50 and it's like $10 cheaper, and they're like haggling with you because so you have to offer something in retail that they don't have online, whether that just be like exquisite customer service and an experience. Like I feel like both my shops provide an environment that you walk into. One of them is like pink and pretty and boutiquey, and the other one's like funky looking Coney Island with like murals and stuff. You're like creating this environment, and then the products in there are either like impulse buys where you don't think about it too much because they're cheap enough that you want it now, or they're things that you can't get anywhere else. So in terms of retail, I would say that that's like kind of the direction you might want to work in, because the online competition is just so intense for any sort of a regular business, like a toy store. Toy stores over the last 8 years, 9 years that I've been open, I've been seeing all the independent toy stores, or even Toys R Us, closing because you can get it at Walmart, you get it online. That is something definitely to keep in mind. And then also, of course, just be wary. Everybody's trying to get your money when you're in business, and everybody thinks you're a sucker. So you get all these calls being like, we're PSEG, we're going to disconnect your electric or gas or whatever if you don't pay us in the next half hour, and get a gift card from CVS. And there's like scams that call like that all the time that like make you think it's urgent or they're going to turn off your lights. And there's like the cash advance things that are out there. And I'm sure there's all sorts of things that I don't even know about yet, depending on what industry you're in, trying to get your well-earned dollars. And then it's so much work. As I said before, like you're pulling all-nighters. Even prior to the pandemic, I was pulling all-nighters for certain sales that we would have. We had like a vintage yard sale. And, like if I had kids or something, like I couldn't do this. Like, I mean, Long Island is also very expensive, New York and Long Island. So maybe if, minimum wage wasn't creeping up to be so high here, right now it's $14 an hour, and next year it's supposed to be $15 an hour. So that's like a little hard to sustain for small businesses. And then the rents are crazy around here. I mean, to have like a little Main Street storefront, you're talking minimum $3,000 a month to be on Main Street.
Mhm.
So, when my friends out of state hear that, they're like, "Oh my God, we pay like $1,000 a month. Are you insane?" I'm like, "Yes, I am."
A little bit.
This is where my family lives, so here we are. Um, So, I think it also depends on what part of the country you live in, because right now Long Island is very expensive, and there's also taxes and all that stuff that goes on. So after I pay all that, and there's insurance, and there's this, and there's that, there's so little left for like the business owners. It's still a lifestyle, even if you're somewhere else that's not as expensive. You're still dedicating a lot of your thoughts and your ideas into reinventing things if a pandemic comes along, or how to keep your customers engaged, and how to keep your customers and things like that, and how to keep your customers happy, because there's something called the 80-20 rule, and it's that 80% of your business comes from 20% of your customers. And I would say that's pretty true. So keeping like good, loyal customers that are into it and keeping them happy and engaged and connected is, really important, because that's going to be your bread and butter.
That's a lot of useful advice. Everybody take heed. So what is your website, so that our listeners at home who aren't able to get to the store, who might live in another state, can find you and check you out?
My website is www.shoppaperdoll.com.
And that's the Curiosity Shop as well?
Yeah, it shows up as like Paper Doll Vintage or Paper Doll, but it's a mixture of products from both the stores. So it's got a little vintage sprinkled on there. It's got some of the retail stuff sprinkled on there. It has the mystery boxes, and then it has sometimes it has some of our events. Another thing that we started doing during the pandemic was we've always done a lot of photo shoots, like pictures of Krampus, pictures of Frank. We had a Valentine's Day shoot. We just did a Queen themed shoot with a big throne. And now we started doing registration online, because it used to be walk-ins only. We wanted to avoid overcrowding, so we started doing time slots. So now on our website, also when we do these photo shoots for now Easter's coming up, so we're going to be bringing Frank back, as well as we're doing this. I'm creating a giant basket where you could look like you're a chocolate bunny in a Easter basket. Or not necessarily chocolate, but you could be like a bunny. There's a Miley Cyrus photo shoot in Vogue a couple of years back that inspired this idea, and it was super cute, and it could go kind of pin up, and it could go kind of sexy, and it could go a little cheeky and fun. And then of course for the family photos, Frank is going to be back this year, so there's registration even for events for anybody who's like local in New York who wants to do those.
That sounds fun.
You have, I see, 3 pages on Instagram that our listeners can follow.
Yes. There is Paper Doll Curiosity for the Curiosity Shop. There's Paper Doll Vintage for the Vintage store. And there's Paper Doll Sale for our sales. Eventually, we were hoping to do like fast Instagram sales on there, but we have not gotten around to doing that yet. So we just list whatever sales we have going at the store on there.
Very cool.
Awesome. Thank you for talking with us today. I've learned so much.
Yes.
I'm in awe.
Thank you for having me.
I mean, it's amazing what you've done, and you're really an inspiration, especially for people who are just starting out in any type of business or anything that they dreamed of doing.
Thank you. It's been a ride. So strap in and embrace yourself. I've been very lucky to have a very supportive business partner who, believed in this for a long time and has helped both invest time in building into the business, as well as my manager, Amanda, and then I had another manager, Todd, who have both invested, not just being an employee, but really believing and helping personally as like a friend and family practically in the shops to do that. Because without help and support to do this also, it wouldn't have been possible. Like, it's not just me. It's, I've had amazing employees as well. I've been very lucky with amazing employees. So I couldn't just do it as me, myself, and I, between like my business partner and, my managers and some great employees. Like it's all the pieces also that work together that help it happen.
Awesome. Well, they sound like great people.
Yeah.
They are.
So we're going to end the episode here. I want to thank Dominique for coming on with us today. It was an honor having you, and we hope to speak with you soon.
All right. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you. I hope to speak to you soon.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed today's podcast, and we really look forward to having you join us again. Take care of yourselves and others, and see you next time.